Order is restored. Magomed Ankalaev brings fans back to reality, knocking out Johnny Walker. No chin, Goofy Goober Walker didn't get his Goofy Goober KO chance. All right, his puncher's chance, it didn't happen. And I think that what we really saw tonight was the most overrated light heavyweight fighting the most underrated light heavyweight. And we saw the results. Second round KO. I know people are saying, welcome to the dark ages. The UFC's done. Magomed Ankalaev's here to take over. Yeah, I get it, man. You don't have to love this guy. Not that boring, though. People call this guy one of the most boring fighters in the UFC. I'm sorry, man, but that's a finish over Johnny Walker. If anything, Johnny Walker's been a little bit more boring than Magomed Ankalaev as of recent. Finishes Anthony Smith. Has a fun fight with Jan Blachowicz. I know Dana White shot all over that fight, but the only reason he was unhappy is because they went to a draw. God forbid both guys want to actually win a fight, and they're not just going to let the other guy walk all over them. But Magomed's actually kind of entertaining, and I get it. A lot of people were thinking, well, if Johnny wins here, it could be him and Pereira. Dude, let me just say this. If you think that Johnny Walker versus Alex Pereira is going to be a better fight than Magomed and Alex Pereira, you're mistaken. Johnny Walker probably gets laid out in the first 2 minutes of that fight. It's a no contest. It's not fun. It's not competitive. He's got no chin. And I'm sorry to break it to you. Can we finally admit this guy's not that fucking good on the feet? Yeah, if he doesn't have Paul Craig in front of him who hits like a fly, he's not able to do anything much to these elite guys. He's not really able to style on them. Ever since he's been KO'd by Corey Anderson back in the day, he's been reserved on the feet when he's going up against these elite fighters that aren't getting knocked out in the first couple of minutes by his wild techniques. Once he settles into that kickboxing groove, the tit-for-tat battle, Johnny Walker's got a leg kick and that's about it. His boxing, it's never been great. His chin, it's always been weak, right? When he's not knocking dudes out with a flying heel hook or, a spinning circus act, okay? He's not that effective when he's going tit-for-tat at range with the leg kicks. I know he did that to Anthony Smith, but that's Anthony Smith's Achilles heel. And people had this idea that Magomed Ankalaev, because he got his legs torn to shreds by Jan Blachowicz, was all of a sudden someone else that had an Achilles heel when it came to his kick defense. And I disagreed with that. In fact, Magomed Ankalaev was checking a lot of Blachowicz's kicks. The only issue is that Blachowicz is willing to go shin to shin because he has those Polish tree trunks for shins that just never seem to get hurt. So he's one of the few guys that can use that weapon. There's not many of them, right? But Magomed, he basically went out there and said, you know what, fuck it. You want to throw kicks? I'll go kick for kick. In fact, I'll double the output when it comes to kicks because that's exactly what he was doing. When Johnny Walker would kick him, he would kick Walker twice. He was confidently pushing him back. He could see everything coming. And I think that I have to give him some more credit because his defense is always something that's been pretty good, all right? We rarely ever see Magomed Ankalaev get cracked. We rarely ever see him get hit clean. Even in the Blachowicz fight, wasn't him that was getting hit clean all that much. And so I think that Magomed Ankalaev, he's one of the most patient fighters in this division who still has high output when he fights. Like, he's a kicker. He's a heavy kicker. He throws a lot of body shots. He backs people up. I don't really understand why people think he's that boring. You know what I mean? This is not even a guy that goes out there like his bread and butter is grappling. Grappling is only in his back pocket when he needs to bring it out, right? And that brings in the Pereira fight. Will he beat Alex Pereira? I don't know. Because Pereira is a whole lot better and more competent on the feet than Johnny Walker. Now, I just mentioned the kicks of Jan Blachowicz and how they gave Magomed Ankalaev issues. Well, there's only one guy that kicks better than Jan, and that's Alex Pereira. And so right off the bat, I'm thinking that that's going to be a tough matchup for anyone that's ever struggled with kicks, no matter who it is. And then I'm going to factor in the takedown defense. And then I'm going to factor in the kickboxing accolades. And sure, we see Alex Pereira having a little tit-for-tat battle with Yuri Prochazka, but he comes out on top. He has a tit-for-tat battle with Jan Blachowicz. But even if Magomed outstruck Jan in the first round of their fight, he still got outstruck in the second and third. I still believe there's a big discrepancy in striking between the two. And Magomed, I don't think he's just going to run through Alex Pereira's guard on the ground and destroy him and finish him down there because he's not really a guy that's got a lot of finishes on the ground. He can take people down, he can control them, and he will be the highest level grappler that Pereira has ever fought. I just don't know if he's going to finish him down there. So that's a competitive fight, which, again, makes me want to bring up the idea that I do think that's a fun fight. I do think it's a fun matchup. I would like to see Alex Pereira get tested on the ground. I would like to see Magomed Ankalaev fight someone that's an absolute killer on the feet because, let's be honest, outside of Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev has not fought that many dangerous guys on the feet, right? He fought Thiago Santos, fair enough. But I'm talking about like the Jamal Hills and the Yuri Prohaskas and the Alex Pereiras. Thiago Santos, when he fought Magomed Ankalaev, wasn't the same guy that he was before he fought John Jones. So I love the matchup. I love Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. I think it's a better fight than Overrated ass Johnny Walker with no chin who has a goofy goober chance in hell to win a fight. I just think that's the case. I do believe that that's a fight that could happen next if Alex Pereira is leaping at the bits to get into the cage. Because he just posted on his Instagram that he's ready to fight. He's going to destroy whoever he stands in front of. I don't know. It was some intimidating Alex Pereira post. The question is, does the UFC want to risk losing the Jamal Hill matchup? Because I don't think Jamal Hill is going to fight Pereira on UFC 300. He may. I think he was in attendance tonight. He looked pretty healthy to me. But at the end of the day, looking pretty healthy and smiling on a camera does not mean you're ready to go and fight Alex Pereira. If Jamal Hill's not ready on UFC 300, the UFC might just make that Pereira and Magomed fight if Pereira's just itching to get in there. And I'd love to see it. But I understand the risk is we lose the potential Jamal Hill fight, which is just a legendary striker versus striker battle, right? Similar to the Yuri Prohaska and Pereira fight. It's just something that I would love to see, especially because Jamal Hill has that chip on his shoulder and all the fans are doubting him, and he's just a guy that's going to be super salty and pissed up in the build-up, and it's going to make for a really fun interaction between him and Alex and Jamal and the media. So I would love to see that fight. I think that what the UFC should do is hold Magomed out, okay? Tell him to chill. Tell him to rest up. Go back to Makhachkala, Dagestan, all right? Ride some horses. We're going to make Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill in May or June, and you fight the winner in Abu Dhabi. Okay, actually, I don't know about that. I don't know about that because I don't love the idea of Magomed getting to fight for a title in his first ever title fight against a defending champion in Abu Dhabi. I don't love the home field advantage every time for these Dagestani guys. All right, so maybe not. So yeah, man, I mean, listen, I'm pretty happy that I got this main event right. I did pretty well on the card, and we are going to break down this card right now. I went 7-3 on the card as a whole. Who knows what would have happened if Manel Kape were to have fought Mateusz Nicolau. We may have went 8-3, but it feels good to enter the year on a win, especially as a guy where people say that my predictions are cursed. 7-3 doesn't seem like a cursed prediction rate. Main event, first one of the year, we're getting it right. Again, you're going to say, oh, congrats for picking the favorite. Oh, wow, yeah, you picked the favorite. You would have said the same thing if I picked the underdog. You would have said, wow, what a silly pick. Going with Spivak to beat Gon, picking the underdog. You should have known better. You can't win with these guys. You can't win. All right, so excuse me for patting myself on the back. It just feels good to enter the new year on a dub. All right, let's get on to the next fight. Jim Miller beats Gabriel Benitez, submits him in the third round. Bro, I'm just going to say this, and you may disagree with me. I'd like to see Jim Miller versus Paddy Pimblett on UFC 300. That's the fight that I want to see. I know he called out Matt Brown. At 170, it's a little bit strange. I understand it's two legends going at each other. I think Jim Miller could give Paddy Pimblett a run for his money. I know Paddy Pimblett just beat Tony Ferguson, and all of a sudden, people are going to say, oh, no, Pimblett's just too high level, of course. Oh, yeah, too high level because he beats Tony Ferguson? This is still the same guy that lost to Jared Gordon. Yeah, he's still a good grappler, but he's not going to out-grapple Jim Miller. It's probably the same fight as the Jared Gordon fight. In fact, Jim Miller has an even better chin than Jared Gordon. It'd be a really interesting matchup. If Paddy can't out-grapple him, which I don't think he would, is he able to stand with Miller, who's a crafty vet, who's got big power in his hands? He even talked about in the post-fight speech that his chin used to be softer when he was younger. I don't know what the hell this man's doing, but I think I attribute that to his diet. That's another fellow cookbook peddler. If you guys don't know, Jim Miller has his own cookbook. So that just goes to show you can never overlook a healthy diet. But that's 5 out of his last 6 fights coming from finishes, man. I think 3 out of his last 6 have been submissions. 2 have been KOs. This guy is literally peaking in his 40s. And I just want to see him fight someone that's actually good. And listen, I know Matt Brown is still knocking dudes out, but old, scraggly, worn-out leather boot Matt Brown just doesn't sell as much as Jim Miller versus Pimblett. And I want the best of both worlds. And I want Pimblett to actually prove that he can beat someone good because, again, don't try to pretend that Jim Miller is on Tony's level. Come on, just stop. I know Tony got to a higher peak than Miller. His career was more successful. But sometimes the guys that get to the highest peak in MMA fall much harder than the Millers of the world that aren't going through the same meat grinder in the rankings and fighting the killers for as long. But man, Jim Miller is still really good, and I feel like this guy could have 5 or 6 or 7 more fights in the UFC because, again, out of his last 6 fights, he's won 5 of them by finish. His chin is good. He's got power in his hands. He's got great combinations. I loved the Muay Thai combinations that he was throwing, the right hand to the left hand into the leg kick. All right, the body shots were beautiful. The knees to the body were beautiful. And as always, he has cardio. He has a great submission game. And he did mention that he just broke the record for the most finishes in lightweight history, which is nuts. Don't confuse it with Charles, who has the most finishes in UFC history, but a lot of those also came at 145 pounds. So beautiful win for Jim Miller. The crafty vet is here to stay. Pimblett and Miller is a big fight. Book it. Early prelims. I don't care if Paddy Pimblett is a big name. He doesn't need to be on the main card. UFC 300 should have big names all throughout the card. Okay? But knowing the UFC, they'll probably disappoint. Let's get on to the next one. Mario Bautista and Ricky Simón. Man, I regret not picking Mario Bautista because I was about to pick him. I just didn't want to be that guy that just changed my pick based on the tape and picked against the guy that lost to Song Yadong. A lot of people would have been saying, you thought he was going to lose just because he lost to Song Yadong? And he went out there and he outworked Ricky Simón. And I'm just going to say this. I think Ricky Simón's really fucking overrated. And I'm not just saying that because he lost the fight tonight. Listen, if this guy doesn't land a knockdown, if he doesn't knock people out or land his knockdowns or get his takedowns consistently, and I understand that's like saying, well, if you strip John Jones's attributes away, he'll never win. But Ricky Simón doesn't have like the best style to win decisions. This is a guy that's dependent on really hurting his opponents with a big shot. People talk about Ricky Simón as someone that has like a heavy pressure style. He never slows down. He's not really doing a whole lot, though. This guy doesn't have high output on the feet, all right? And with a guy like Mario Bautista that has good grappling, that has good wrestling, that has a pretty good gas tank, if you can't take him down, then it's going to be pretty difficult to outstrike him with that kind of output, all right? And that's what I like to see from Mario Bautista tonight. He really showcased good takedown defense. When he got taken down by Ricky Simón, he nullified the ground game. He got right back up to his feet, and he just put the pressure on him, man. He let his hands go. He got in his face. He was sitting behind the jab, high output striking. And I think that we really underrated Mario Bautista after his last fight against Damon Blackshear, right? And Damon Blackshear did better on the ground with Mario Bautista than Ricky Simón did tonight. So, yeah, it would have looked bad if I picked Mario Bautista to beat Ricky Simón just because Ricky lost to Song Yadong. But I should have, man, because I was watching Mario Bautista's striking and I was watching Ricky Simón's fights back and I was thinking, yeah, this guy's kind of low output, and that's why I picked him to win based on damage. I think he'll get a couple of knockdowns. But as I learned a couple of times tonight, including with the Matthew Semmelsberger fight, maybe I should stop picking guys to win based on the knockdown chance, right? Unless they're consistently finishing guys with knockouts, maybe it's not the best to pick someone by saying, I just think the damage is going to be there for them. Mario Bautista's output is excellent. His cardio is excellent. And I just don't think Ricky Simón is that great of a striker. He kind of reminds me of the bantamweight version of Curtis Blades, where he could take anyone down, but once he gets to the top of his division, he's not just going to run through people down there. And then on the feet, it's like, well, the low output, you're going to get outworked by a bunch of guys. So I think I definitely have overrated Ricky Simón. I think fans have been overrating him for a while. Let's not forget he lost to Uriah Faber, which is just a terrible look. Okay, even though he did beat Merab, he was losing that fight. And we definitely underrated Mario Bautista, who has crazy output, an amazing gas tank, great grappling, has a submission game, The only thing he's lacking is power. Okay, so I would like to see Mario Bautista fight someone like Rob Font. He called out Rob Font. I think that would be an excellent fight. Let's make it happen. Ricky Simón, I think that this was his fraud check moment. You may say that that was against Uriah Faber. I disagree. He was still really young back then, and he could hide behind that. This is like the fight where I'm thinking, all right, maybe there's a lot of guys in this division that can beat Ricky Simón. Maybe he's not that great on the feet, okay? He's got like the big overhand wrestler's chance to knock people down or knock people out. And if he can out-grapple someone, which is a lot of guys at bantamweight, because that's a division where everyone's pretty well-rounded, you're not going to win the fight. So let's get on to the next one. Waldo Cortez-Acosta. Okay, we need to talk about this versus Andrei Arlovski. I said going into this fight, because some people were hyping up Waldo Cortez-Acosta because he was like a minus 700 favorite. I said, if this guy doesn't finish Andrei Arlovski, he's never going to be anything in the UFC. That's how it's been in the heavyweight division for a while. The only guys to finish Andrei Arlovski throughout the past 4, 5, 6 years, Francis Ngannou, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Tom Aspinall, Marcos Rogério de Lima. Everyone else has gone to a decision with him. Jairzinho, Ngannou, Aspinall, all top 10 guys. Even though Ngannou's gone, you get the point that I'm making. You have to knock this guy out if you want to be something. I would have rathered Cortez-Acosta go out there and get knocked out trying than go to a decision and beat this guy. Going to a decision with Andrei Arlovski is a death sentence for your career at heavyweight. It just goes to show that you're another run-of-the-mill Apex fighter. Back on the conveyor belt you go. We'll let you know when your next assignment at the Apex is here. We'll wind you up. We'll put a battery pack in you, and we'll put you on your way. Okay? Because you're never going to fight outside of the Apex. That's basically what Waldo Cortez-Acosta did. Despite him winning, his career got ruined tonight. Now, of course, these guys have a chance to fight for their freedom. These NPC heavyweights, they got a chance, but we'll see, man. Not a good look. And I know he was trying to style on Andrei Arlovski. He was trying to emote on him. He just looked like a fool doing that. Because listen, man, even if you're slightly outstriking Andrei Arlovski is just happy to be getting a paycheck and not get brain damage at the same time. Arlovski was the one that won tonight. All right? Again, Marcos Rogério de Lima finished Andrei Arlovski. He got rewarded in his next fight against Derek Lewis. He fought Derek Lewis. They were on a main event. Not a main event, I'm sorry. They were on a pay-per-view main card. Okay? Shamil Gaziev. I know I'm bringing up a random heavyweight fighter, but he finished Martin Buday in his UFC debut a couple of weeks ago. The UFC is rewarding him by giving him a fight against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. In the heavyweight division, if you get an emphatic finish and you actually look like a powerful heavyweight, they will reward you. They'll put you on a pay-per-view. They'll put you up against a Derek Lewis. Waldo Cortez-Acosta lost his opportunity to get bumped up by doing that. And so, again, even in the third round, I was saying if this guy finishes Andrei Arlovski in the third round, that's still a loss. You got to finish him early. I'm sorry, you got to finish him early. I know some of you guys in the comments are going to be saying, wow, so disrespectful. Andrei Arlovski's so good. Andrei Arlovski's whole style is just based on surviving and going tit for tat, being defensively sound. He's crafty. He knows what he's doing. But again, he's just happy to show up for the paycheck and not get knocked out in the process. He makes it hard for people to KO him. So Cortez-Acosta got fraud checked as far as I'm concerned. He really did. All that emoting, it wasn't fooling me. And it wasn't fooling the judges. And it's not fooling the UFC because I guarantee you this guy will be booked for the Apex in his next fight. Okay? And he also looks like a middleweight that's fighting at heavyweight. He's kind of small for the division. Andrei Arlovski was a lot bigger than him. And Arlovski's like a saggy bag of muscle because he's an older man, 44 years old. But just a pathetic performance from Waldo Acosta. He should really be ashamed of himself. Again, it would have been more honorable for him to get knocked out in the first round, at least trying to bulldoze Andrei Arlovski, making a big mistake, than it is to take him to a decision. So, Marcus McGee, Gaston Bolaños. Marcus McGee knocks out Gaston Bolaños in the second round. I like Marcus McGee a lot. I think he's a really exciting fighter. The worst part about him is that he's 33 and that he's a bantamweight. Okay, another guy out of the MMA lab in Arizona. He trains with O'Malley. He trains with Mario Bautista. He's excellent. He's got the hands. Gaston Bolaños, at certain angles, looked exactly like Ilia Topuria. It was actually crazy. I just want to mention that. It looked like Marcus McGee was beating Topuria's ass tonight. Who would I like to see him fight next? I want to see him fight one of the Basharat brothers, really, because I want to see them get fraud checked, okay? The Basharat brothers were also in the mix. Farid Basharat, Taylor Lapilus. I predict this to a T. I said it was going to be a stinkfest, a typical Basharat bro stinkfest. Their style is pitter-pat kicks, punches on the guard, takedowns into neck breathing, and chest licking. Okay, it basically looks like that when Basharat gets his takedowns. He takes a guy down, holds on for dear life, right? And I can appreciate good high-level grappling in MMA. All right, when Jim Miller took down Gabriel Benitez, he was working. He was looking for finishes. He was looking to transition into dominant positions. The Basharat brothers, I'm sorry, man. I don't care how many wins these guys stack up in the UFC. Notice how they never get the bump up in competition. Well, the reason why these guys never get bumps up in competition is because the UFC knows how boring they are, and they just don't want to risk having them stink up fights with people that are actually exciting. Okay, like prospects, for example, like Marcus McGee. The UFC is going to want to give Marcus McGee someone like Adrian Yanez. That's a fight I want to see, by the way. Yanez, coming off of a couple of tough losses, still higher ranked than Marcus McGee. Marcus McGee coming off of a couple of good wins. It'd be a banger of a matchup, a great fight. The UFC is probably going to make a fight like that. For Farid, similarly to Waldo Cortez-Acosta, they see Farid Basharat stinking it up against Taylor Lapilus. Pitter-pat, low kicks, getting all of his kicks checked, caught on the guard, getting the takedowns, sniffing the legs, sniffing the neck, right? And again, I talk about how I can appreciate high-level grappling. We saw it in Preston Parsons and Matthew Semmelsberger. At least there was some action on the ground. We saw it with Jim Miller and Gabriel Benitez. Sometimes guys actually work on the ground, and sometimes they don't. And the UFC sees Farid Basharat go out there time and time again and get a stinky decision. All right? What are they going to do? They're going to put this guy on a pay-per-view? No. So I'm tired of hearing all of the fans say things like, man, and not all of the fans. These are like the super hardcores. They'll say things like, when are people going to wake up to the Basharat brothers? Man, those Basharat brothers are slept on. They're beating nobodies. They're not beating anyone worth a damn because they're not getting the bump up in competition or the bump up in name value as far as opponents go because the UFC doesn't want to put them in those spots. Not because they're not necessarily good enough, but because they're so boring, and I don't think they're that good. I think that these guys aren't that good, actually, because they don't do anything on the ground. Think about Ricky Simone failing to do anything with Mario Bautista on the ground. If the Basharat bros are in front of someone like Mario Bautista or Ricky Simone, where they're not just going to be able to sniff him on the ground, they're fucked on the feet, right? These guys have pillow punches. They're not actually trying to scrap. They're not really putting themselves in harm's way. I don't think they're that good. So, yeah. Terrible performance from Farid Basharat. Gets another win, of course. Again, this guy could have 100,000 wins. He still won't get a ranked opponent. He still won't get a bump up in competition. He'll just keep fighting the same levels of guys. Marcus McGee looked fantastic. I want to see him fight Adrian Yanez. Let's get on to the next one. Gene Silva is my new favorite fighter. Gene Silva, I didn't know who he was tonight. That was the one fight I didn't predict on this card. And god damn, is that guy entertaining. All right. He went out there, styled on Weston Wilson. He was staring him down before the fight like he was Pereira, and people were talking shit about him in my live chat, including me. But then he goes out there, and he has a similar performance to that of Michel Pereira when he fought that Dagestani guy that tried to slap him in the face at weigh-ins. Remember when Pereira was fighting that guy, and he was just slapping him and shit and humiliating him? That is exactly what it was like watching Gene Silva and Weston Wilson, except Gene Silva finished Weston Wilson in the first round and dropped him all over the place. He was flopping on the deck like a fish. And then he gets on the mic. He starts barking like a dog. He mogs Michael Bisping, all right? I don't even know what he did to Michael Bisping, but he was like showing him techniques and walking him through things and talking to Bisping in a hushed tone of voice to command attention or what. I don't know. Gene Silva's a character. One of the weirdest fighters in the UFC. Some of you guys are going to call him cringe. But I think we have a new star in our midst, all right? As good of a post-fight speech you could give. Weird, but he's unique and as good of a performance as you can get. Again, Gene Silva and his 5 minutes of styling on Weston Wilson is more entertaining than Waldo Cortez-Acosta's whole career, basically. It's more entertaining than the Basharat's highlight reel. Basharat brothers, both of the Basharat brothers, their entire combined highlight reel isn't even as entertaining as those 5 minutes that Gene Silva had against Weston Wilson. That's the guy the UFC is going to want to promote. And last but not least, Joshua Van gets a finish over Felipe Buenas. The prospect that I've been hyping up since the beginning of his career is now 3-0. First TKO in the UFC. Went out there and broke Felipe Buenas after having a hard first round. I believe he lost the first round, but it looks even better for him because his last fight, he lost the first round too, and I actually like to see this guy make adjustments, all right? And what I'm starting to notice with Joshua Van is that his cardio is ridiculous, all right? His shot selection is great. He's got amazing boxing. The body shots, yet again, were on display that definitely aided to him finishing and breaking Felipe Buenas and gassing him out. He honestly reminds me of like a Max Holloway of the flyweight division. Just the way that he puts pressure on guys. His high output, his cardio, all right? He does remind me of a young Max in a way. Maybe the chin isn't as great, but it doesn't need to be. I'm not saying he's exactly like Holloway. But yeah, Joshua Van continues to be one of the more interesting, entertaining prospects in the UFC. He gets it done 3-0. There's not many flyweights. Maybe a Steve Ercik matchup. I wouldn't mind it. I know people are going to, oh, no, don't do that. Don't feed him to the wolves, Steve Ercik. I don't think Steve Ercik's that good. Let's make it happen. How about that? And if it's not Steve Ercik, I don't know. Who else is there? Maybe we could bump him up against Farid Basharat. He's got good takedown defense. Just give him a fun flyweight. Someone that's going to stand with him. Maybe Magomed Ankalaev now. Magomed Ankalaev is basically fighting for a damn number one contenders fight right now. But there's only 20 of them. I mean, it's not that hard to find Joshua Van an opponent. 3-0. Things are looking good. Overall on the card, I went 7-3. We're off to a great start. And thank you guys for tuning into this video. I appreciate you guys showing me the support. We cracked 62. I don't even know if we're at 62,000, but I don't know. I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.